Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
So let's say you go to a psychic medium. You're trying to connect with somebody. Maybe it's your grandmother, or maybe it's your cousin, relative, mother, father, maybe brother, sister that has passed on. What is the psychic medium getting in terms of symbols and signs from the other side, from your loved one? We're gonna kind of peel back the layers on that today and see what that all means, and what somebody like this guy who does readings all the time, been doing them for decades, knows his stuff. He's plugged into the spirit world, if you will, and we're going to pick his brain on that today. Timmedium is back with us on the program. Hi there, Tim. How you doing?
I'm great, Steve. How are you?
Very well. Thanks for asking. Yeah, this still intrigues me. And I started in the metaphysical world, working with psychics, meeting psychics, and it wasn't even my goal. It just happened. And then I would meet another one. And I always say, I'm not a psychic connoisseur. It just happens, but maybe it's happening for a reason. And then we met. But it still fascinates me what somebody like yourself gets in terms of those signals or those signs coming from the other side. Can we go over that? You know, the kind of things that you get?
Absolutely. There's many different things that a spirit will send. Now, one sign for one client will have different ramifications or implications for the next sitter or the next client that you may have. So being able to understand what that particular spirit is trying to send is something of the challenge, is the challenge.
Would you say that when it's a loved one and they're proud, and this is just an example, I've often heard from a psychic medium that they'll say, oh, I'm seeing somebody's jacket and the buttons are bursting. And to them, that medium, it means that the person on the other side is proud. That's how they interpret it. Do you have certain signs that you get that always mean the same thing for different people? Obviously, you talk to my dad, he might say he's proud. You might talk to Jimmy's dad over there. His dad also may say he's proud of some accomplishments and maybe some detail with that. But the symbol of the sign seems to be the same for some mediums. Is it that way for you?
It is to an extent. It is, yes. For me, let's say somebody's has milk lactose intolerant, they will send me a specific information in regards to the client being lactose intolerant. Now, that's basically what they're saying is their understanding of it's more of just something very specific in regards to the connection that you have from one to the other, from the other side to this side, and it's more of a recognition factor to that. But in some cases where you get horses, now the horses could have 5 different meanings. It could be the farm, it could be the racetrack, it could be on and on and on. It could be many different things. So those things are very different and specific, and the understanding of the spirit now plays a big factor also into the sitter.
When you say understanding the spirit, do you mean understanding the type of person that they were?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very, very much so. Yes, Steve. The understanding of the spirit, and also not just the understanding of the spirit, it's also the understanding of the message they want to send across to exactly where they are in regards to say somebody says horses, or we're working with the horses. Now the horses could mean gambling, that they like to gamble a lot, right? Or that's just an understanding of the recognition of who's here and or the direction they want to go in and what they want to talk about. Or
so it's almost as if you have to work with the person that you're doing the reading for. Like, for example, you could say, all right, well, I'm talking to your Uncle Vinny's coming through and I got a whoopee cushion. I don't know what that means. What's with the whoopee cushion? And then the person that the client may say, he was the quintessential practical joker. Ah, there it is. That's where it makes sense. Means nothing to you. You're just passing it on, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's identifying basically who's here when they do those things specifically. I did a reading yesterday with a very nice lady, and her father was a priest, and he didn't bring in anything until the end about his church services, and that came with and again, this is something that I get quite often, are church choirs for whatever reason it may be, and that led to a lot of singing. That led to who he was by what he wore, and by what he wore told me who exactly I was dealing with was the pastor.
So she didn't reveal that he was a member of the clergy going into the reading.
No, I didn't get that till probably about 2/3 into the reading that he
Wow.
wanted to talk about. It was all he wanted to talk about the special moments that he had with his daughter, and he kept bringing up all these special moments from when she was younger. Now, what had happened was they had an issue with they had parted ways, and that's why he kept bringing up all these specific beautiful times when she was younger. And she revealed that to me, that that's why he had done that. Then he brought in all this music. So no, there was no indication at all from the start of it that he was part of the clergy. It's not something that he really wanted to talk about, because he wanted to talk about the good times with his daughter that he had had.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. And then I guess all the other stuff kind of laid in, just organically as you're talking, you find out that he was a pastor, then you find out a little bit more. Apparently he had a message he wanted to get through, and that was the relationship with his daughter.
The special times when they were younger. Again, they had separated. They had, I guess, had some issues, and she didn't get back to him before he had passed, and so going back to the special moments in her life was specifically what he wanted to talk about. And of course, when he went to the suit, the funny thing was he had all these different colored ties that he liked to wear. So he did have a sense of humor with these odd colored ties he liked to wear too. And that brought me to his suit, that brought me to his hat, that brought me to his church, that brought me to, well, actually, he brought me to the church first, and then he brought me to what he was wearing. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's almost like an investigation, as you put the pieces together.
It is. And in this case, it was more about the love and the kindness and the grace that they had as a father-daughter. And that's what he wanted to remember. And that's very special. It was very special to her, as she was very moved by all the information he was bringing through. And when you have a client in tears or close to tears, and that's the special moments.
Hmm. Wow. How about some other anything stand out for you? Interesting things that came through that got validated.
I had read for this lady one time out in Eastern Canada, and she waited 6 hours for this reading. She was just last in line, and I got to her on the very last day of the show, and she was an 85-year-old lady. Her husband had come in. She wanted to connect with her husband who had passed, and this one I'll always remember because I tell my students the same thing. I tell them about this because it's very moving reading. And so I connected with her husband. I identified with him quite quickly, and I moved on. And what he had told me, and the reasons for why he had left her in such a bad place, in such a grief-stricken place, was for the reasons that he did. And I asked her if she wanted to hear what he had to say, because it wasn't very nice. It was actually quite brutal. And she says, "I've heard it all before. Please share it." And so I did, and I'll always remember that because it was very brutal. And ethics and mediumship are very, very, you have to be ethical in mediumship. It's the key. But here we were, and she wanted to hear it, and she says, "I've heard it all before. You're not going to surprise me." And in turn, it turns out that she ended up in tears as well. And it's one I'll always remember. That's the one I'll always go to. Very difficult. Yeah.
We skimmed this in the past, but I want to go a little bit deeper. When you get something and it may not be the best news. Do you still deliver it?
I do, but I pick my spots more so. If I have a suicide victim, and of course, let's just say something very traumatic happens, and I have mom across the way, and as you walk through the reading with son per se, let's say it's son that did what he did. I would pick my spots in that specific situation. I would go into the reading. I would continue into the reading, and I would gradually work my way into what the boy's trying to tell mom. And as I would go through it, I would pick my spot and understand that I would deliver the brutalness of the passing at a specific moment. I would. You have to. That's part of what we do. That's why sometimes it's mediumship is not for everybody.
That can be challenging, when you're faced with that situation. Let's say somebody's health is in jeopardy. Would you say that to them, or would you kind of temper it a little bit and say, you might want to visit a doctor about that, or pick a body part, your heart or whatever it might be?
I do that actually. I very much guide them to maybe you should go see a doctor about a certain portion of the body because they allow me to scan the body, and I'm usually quite accurate with that. And as I go through the body, they'll show me certain things, and I do pass that information along. And they listen contently, but it is very important to understand. Uh, I don't foresee death or pretend that I know about death. I just won't go there. It's not something I'm interested in, but I will lead them to uh, a doctor or to go see a doctor about a certain body part. Yes.
Wow. Huh. Uh, do it seems like you do a lot of festivals and fairs for psychics. We've mentioned that a couple of times. That's come up. Is that right?
I do. I'm just leaving the fair actually, and I'm heading home actually. Typically, we can do probably about 50 readings a weekend, which is it's excessive, but it surely brings you into a lot of different types of readings, and it's not even at this point. That's not practice. That's profession. That's beyond. It's sometimes you do get tired inside those the middle of the day sometimes where your readings aren't specifically where you might want them to be. Because sometimes you just get lazy in that situation, and that's on the medium. That's totally on me, and I recognize that. And after a reading such as that, I might just pick it up in the next reading and go, "Hey, listen, you got to bear down because it's not about you. You got to do this for the people. That's who you're working for. That's who you're working with the spirit, and you're working with the client."
Yeah.
So some
Any job, you have a lot of work. You're continuing doing the same thing, especially something like this, which is so emotional as well. It's got to be draining, and how do you reset from one client to the next when they're, in that situation when they're kind of back to back?
it's something that I have a connection with the spirit world with. So as soon as one client will leave, that's where the spirit has to leave. They have to go. They can't stay. The next client will come in, and then it's game on with that particular client. So it's up to you to have a good relationship with the spirit world and have discussed that. And that's basically how I've worked it. And it's worked out well for me to be able to leave the spirit behind or move along per se and start with the next one.
I think you mentioned before you have spirit guides.
We do. We all have spirit guides. We all have an angel. We all have spirit guides. Spirit guides will come and go for us, though, depending on major changes in our life. And as we go through a major change, as we go through a big left-hand turn or a major shift in our life, a spirit guide will leave and another one will come in for us that'll help us through that portion of our life. Very much true. Yeah.
Wow. When we say that, is it somebody who has passed on to the other side coming to the call, or it can be, but not necessarily?
Not necessarily, no. If I'm going to put it to you in this perspective, now, if somebody's just passed on 2 years ago, highly doubt that they're going to be your particular spirit guide for the simple fact they weren't there prior. They'll be a part of your soul family as always because that never changes. But as for spirit guides, those are some of the things when we go back home that we become, or those are our jobs when we go back home. So a family member might be a spirit guide for someone else, and or another family member. That's but as for somebody that's passed on 2 years ago, not necessarily, no.
We talked about Uncle Vinny before in the whoopee cushion as an example. Do you recall any crazy things that came through? Like things in a reading that were funny, unusual, kind of weird?
Many. I sometimes I burst out laughing, and again with this lady last night, and I'm just going to go to her because it's fresh in my memory. And her father kept on bringing in these bras, and I said to the lady, I says, you don't like bras, do you?" First of all, I didn't know how to bring it across to her, but she was very gracious about it, and I just brought it up to her in a very kind manner. And she burst out laughing. She says, "I've never liked to wear them," and he knows that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
And this, who was
Yeah.
this that was coming through?
This was her father that was coming through,
Okay.
and he had just passed a year ago, just over a year ago. So he hadn't been gone that long. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. I think I mentioned this. Somebody reached out to us about this when somebody passes. I've heard this from some mediums. Everybody's different. That you should wait some time before getting a reading. And your thoughts on that? I believe you said you don't really have to wait.
I was taught to wait at least 3 months before connecting with somebody. But for me, doing these fairs and working with a lot of clients, I've had clients that this happened 2 or 3 weeks ago, where I informed the client that I had their father here, and it was right at the end of the show, so I never got to finish their reading. So I booked them for a Wednesday to redo their reading, and they had got to me on the Wednesday. I gave them the reading, and then they had told me that their father had passed that Sunday, and I was the one that let them know that their father had passed because that's who I had in the spirit world. So it was minutes. I've had the next day, I've had a week, I've had 2 weeks, I've had it all. I could probably mention about 25 of them to you prior to that 3 month window. Why me? I'm not sure why they're able to contact me that quickly, but they are. So I'm quite happy about that, actually. It's not something that I practiced or wanted, it just happened.
I say it all the time. I always throw it out there. If you get anything on me, fully transparent, throw it at me. Anything comes up. If it has something to do with me wearing bras, I'm going to deny that, and that's the truth. Uh, you've been doing this a long time. When did you kind of jump in professionally? Call it that.
Well, not decades. I would say a decade ago, I started professionally. I started doing the work, of course, when I was a lot younger. Say, I could see when I was 4 years old, but as I went through my life, I could always communicate and see them. Now, did I know what I was doing? I had no clue what I was doing. None. I know I could talk to them. I could communicate. They would tell me stuff, but until I went to my first tutor, my first educator, that's when I started realizing the basic structure of it all. I had no idea. I didn't even know what a medium was until I got into it, until I got into my second school, and there I was doing what I was doing, and going, "Wow, this is pretty cool. This is what's going on," and that's why I can communicate and talk to them now. It was just practicing and developing my skills and developing all the things in the different areas that I needed to, and this is where it's led me. And I feel pretty honored and pretty fortunate that I'm in the situation I'm in. Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about this before in that you can teach people how to, I'm not even going to say how to be a medium. It sounds like we're all mediums. There's different degrees. You're on the 10 scale, I'm on a 2 because I'm not tuned into it, so to speak. Does that sound reasonable?
Well, we all have intuition. It's what we do in the direction they want us to go. And when I say they, I consider they to be the spirit world in the direction. Everybody's a healer. We're now mediumship is healing, Reiki work is healing, cards are healing. It goes on and on. It's all about the healing work and being connected. Um, I have two classes that I'm running later today. Now, there's a lot of intuitive people inside both those classes. Now, is that the direction they're all good? They're all going to be learn how to become mediums, but the direction they go in and their specifics is up to whoever, not up to me. I'm going to gradually, gently, and graciously show them the way to connect and who to connect and or how to connect and who they're connected to and the reasons they're here. But if they stick to that, that's totally up to them. Right.
Yeah. I just try to get my arms all around all of this. I just find it fascinating that, you can do this. And we all have some ability, which I truly believe. Do you find yourself, have you ever meditated? Do you meditate?
Meditation is a big factor. I don't meditate anymore. I meditated every day for years. Sitting in the first thing I ask my students is, how's your meditation going? And what they'll tell me, I'll already know because I already have dialed in. And sitting in the power, sitting in a dark room, quieting your mind. And that's where we start. We don't put the roof on before we have the basement in, right? And I mean, it's cliche saying that. I get that, but it's so very true because everybody at class 2 wants to be a professional medium, and of course, 3 years later, you're still working your way there, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
Do you get things from people in your everyday life? Like you personally, let's say you go to buy a car and you're sitting across the desk and the salesperson is there. Are you getting anything like, oh, man, this guy is trying to take me for a ride here, not in the car financially? Uh, do you pick up on things like that?
I can, yes, I do. If I truly want to, I can basically go into the grocery store or into the car dealership and know exactly what most everybody's thinking if I care to, but I choose not to because it's not something I care to. I'd rather meet somebody personally and get to know them on a personal level as opposed to the other way. It's just for me, it's a lot more fun because you're meeting the person in general. You're not meeting their other side or their other sides per se.
Eh,
It's not something, yeah.
I'm just using that example as to your benefit. Like you want to know, how that's going on. Is this a good
Uh,
deal with this car? All those kind of situations. If you needed to, you could, is what I'm hearing.
yes, I can dial into most anybody. I can walk into a store and dial into everybody I want to. Yes, I can do that. In fact, that's one of the things that I teach my students. I give them an exercise and I say, go to the mall, go sit down, grab a cup of coffee, grab a dinner, but read 25 people, but you can't talk to them because of course that's unethical. But I guarantee you 95%, other than maybe one or two people, you're going to be 95% on. You're going to be so extremely close on because you're just surrendering and trusting and believing what you're getting. And it's going to be usually correct, as it typically is in our classroom setting.
How do you know it is correct? Because you're not speaking with them, so they're not validating it.
You come home and then you start working with somebody or you come to class, and just by what you did, by surrendering and trusting and believing what you got, it's going to work extremely well in class. And you're going to be about 80 to 95% correct in class,
Wow.
mediumistically, not psychically. That you're reading them psychically, you're not reading them mediumistically. Those are two different vibrations. Now, psychic is, and this isn't a negative when I say this because psychic is a lower vibration. Now, mediumistic work is a little higher vibration because you're connecting to the spirit world. But regardless, you're still connecting, whether it's psychically or mediumistically. And if you come to class and you find out, holy smokes, what I did there has benefited me in class so much, and it's so very true, right?
So to me, it sounds like you get to this point where you have the faith, you trust in yourself. It's just a knowing. You just know if you're looking at somebody and you're getting something, it's like, yeah, that's what that is. All right, okay, great. On to the next one. You just know.
Yeah, and you can go deeper if you stick with it for say 30 seconds, or if you stick with it with 2 minutes. the information gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to where you can do, per se, a half-hour reading and be pretty accurate on that half-hour reading just by your exercises that you've done. And everything you do is beneficial. Reading keys, the energy on the keys, right? It's the
Wow.
same thing. You're going to be able to read who's had those keys in their hands. You're going to be able to. It's a little different than reading somebody in the mall, of course, but I think you're understanding. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a race car
Yes.
driver that's got years of experience, and he's got a big race coming up, and puts on the suit, puts on the helmet, gets in, doesn't even give it a thought. Yeah, we're going. That's it. Because he just knows, I know what to expect. This is the way it's going to go. Same thing for a doctor doing open heart surgery. We walk in there, we're like, I don't even know where to begin. He just knows. He knows what to expect. All right, every once in a while, there's going to be a little curve here and there, but he also has the confidence to get around it just because he knows he's done it. He has that confidence, that faith in himself. Interesting. Yeah, I'm getting a clearer picture of all of us now. And you can do readings virtually anywhere on the planet, right?
I do a lot of readings on Zoom, a lot of readings in person, over the phone, anywhere you like.
Excellent.
You just got to believe, surrender, and trust, and away you go. You're going to get the information. It's going to be quite accurate, and of course, evidential mediumship is specifically evidence. So that's what I do, and everything that from the spirit will need to be evidence. So the yeses and the nos. If you're getting no's, there's something going on. So, but if you should be getting the yeses if you're connected properly. Yes.
Thanks for explaining that, because you refer to yourself as an evidential medium, and when you connect it, the evidence, you provide the evidence, which to me is the validation. Your website is just simply timmedium.com, right?
Correct. Yep. Timmedium.com. There's lots of good information on there. And feel free to contact me at any time.
Yeah. Make the connection with Tim. He'll make the connection for you, or maybe make a connection that can help you learn how to do this, because that's another aspect of what you do. Tim, always great talking with you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Very much so. The same back to you. Really enjoyed the show.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.